So zone 1 is that first 30 feet from the home, including the home, and going out 30 feet. And in that zone, we want to keep everything lean, clean, and green, using the best of the best Firewise plants. That's low growing. That's stuff like this. These sedums, succulents that are really low growing, really high moisture content. This is probably one of the #1 Firewise type plant materials because of really high moisture content, doesn't need a lot of water, and really good for zone 1. Turf can be perfectly appropriate for zone 1 as long as it's being watered and mowed and maintained like a turf. We want to use rock mulch and avoid using organic mulches like soil aids and barks and those type that are actually flammable. So rock mulch, keeping things well watered and green. Hardscapes can break up fuel, so patios, walkways, pavers. Here's some examples of hardscapes that you could use in zone 1 to break up fuel continuity, having a water feature or some rock feature, creating a catch by putting in something like a dry creek. And remember those embers being the #1 reason homes will burn down? They're flying around like snow. So like a dry creek aspect to a landscape could be a little low spot where embers could collect. Succulents I talked about. Here's hens and chicks, some sedums, which there are many different kinds of sedums that have a lot of different colors and textures that are an excellent choice for zone 1. This is an ice plant, which is also really high in moisture content, and then cacti, all really good zone 1 plant choices. Remember that anything that attaches to the home is part of the home, so fence or sheds or any kind of other little structure that attaches to the home, that's considered part of the home. So we want to consider those more fire resistant materials for that as well, so using stone or metal fencing instead of wood fence. So zone 2 is from 30 to 100 feet out. In this zone, we're still wanting to try to use Firewise plant material, avoiding conifers, and then spacing becomes an important part of it. So how we arrange our plant material is very important. We can have groupings and islands of plants, but then having either a pathway or some sort of hardscape in between them so that it's not just continuous plant material. And the idea is generally that we're trying to reduce the volume of vegetation. Here's an example from the Firewise demonstration garden that I manage, zone 2. We've got some firewitch dianthus down here at the bottom, and then Nepeta ficini. This is a Walker's Low catmint, and then using all this rock mulches, lava fines and some decomposed granite for mulches all around the plants, creating a little field breaks. Zone 3 would be from 100 to 200 feet out from the home, and kind of considering this as a transition zone. A lot of your existing plants are okay here, but still want to maybe thin them, pick and choose the most healthy, thin out anything that's possibly not so healthy, keeping tree limbs pruned up 6 to 10 feet, and being aware of ladder fuels. So if we're going to prune the tree up to 6 to 10 feet off the ground, we don't want to be planting 4 and 5 foot shrubs anywhere nearby it that could transfer a ground fire up into a canopy fire. So keeping that cleared out and not have ladder fuels around trees that we pruned up. So plant chemistry is important. I talked about conifers being the most flammable plant type, and we're looking for chemicals that are more resistant, which one is called saponin. And this is my hands with some Philadelphus lewisii leaves. That's our state flower, actually. And the Native Americans use these leaves to wash with. There's a soap content in the leaves, and that soap content acts more like a retardant than adding fuel to the fire like oils and resins that we would find in junipers and pine. Here's a plant with a high soap content. This one here is a rock soapwort, and the genus Saponaria is even referring to the fact that it has saponin in it. This one here is a low-growing, ground cover, beautiful plant. And as a matter of fact, if you will come out and visit me at the Firewise demonstration garden that I manage, I will give you one of these plants. I've grown out this one here, about 150 of them. I'm kind of getting rid of them slowly as the season goes on, but if you'll come out and tour with me, come see me at the garden, I'll give you one of these plants. More plants with some soap content. I talked about our state flower having soap content in it. This is a relative. It's a cultivar. Here in the quote marks means it's a cultivar. It means it's been bred for and hybridized for specific traits, and in this case it's dwarf. Our state flower can get pretty big, like 15 feet tall, 15 feet wide. That's, even though it has a soap content, that's still a lot of fuel for a fire to be that big. So I prefer to pick a cultivar that's more dwarf. And the yucca is also a high soap content. Pause for a minute and tell you that all the plants that I'm going to talk about here are all very drought tolerant plants. So that was one of the key factors, that we didn't want to choose anything that was much of a high water need plant, because if a person's irrigation system happened to break down and they're out of town and this thing wasn't getting the water anymore and then it starts declining, then it's a fire hazard. So we wanted to choose a plant palette that had a very low water use and then be a healthy plant without so much water. Pectin is another chemical that we look for more fire resistant. That's your snowberries. This is a native, and it's a shrub that gets about 4 feet tall, and the berries are not edible, good for wildlife, but a nice moderate sized native shrub. Some more plants with pectin. This is a native elderberry, and it has a very high moisture content leaf. And one thing to watch out for, I guess, on the straight species native elderberry, if you didn't do any kind of maintenance to it, over a period of years, it could become a fire hazard. Those of you that live out in the wildland, far out into the wildland, probably already have these around, and I would take them and chop them completely to the ground, and they will regrow, and the new growth is really nice and fleshy and very high moisture. But if they're 20, 30 years old, they start getting decadent and a lot of flammable woody material in there. This is an evening primrose, Oenothera macrocarpa. It's a very drought tolerant, low growing, ground cover plant. Gorgeous, big, huge yellow flowers. And the key for me is that the moisture content is very high in July and August, right through the peak of the hottest part of the summer, that it's staying very supple and succulent and gorgeous. Common name is evening primrose. I think I got it on, yeah, it's on that one there, and it might be, nope, sorry. Come visit me out at the garden. D&B might have it, I'm not sure. I went through what we've got for Firewise plants out there, and I found this. This is a service berry, which is a native, and this one is a cultivar, but I also noticed that this particular cultivar gets about 15 feet tall. That's still a little big. So this one definitely could be a nice plant, but being that size, out there ways, probably belongs more in zone 3 or towards the end of zone 2. I wouldn't want to put it in anywhere near the house in zone 1. This is your zone 1 kind of plant here.